Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to Soccer Rewind, the channel that puts the retro in perspective. I'm your host, Ken Tomash. We will probably tonight have several viewers who are not familiar with the channel. That's cool. But the gist is that usually we take a complete vintage American soccer game and we interview somebody connected to that game. We look at the entire game. We interview somebody before the game, at halftime, and after the game. Could be a player, a coach, a broadcaster, a historian. And then we use the benefit of hindsight to gain insight into the teams, the games, and the moments that helped shape American soccer history. But tonight we're going to try something a little bit different. It's the first time we've ever tried this. Maybe it'll work. We hope that somebody's going to watch and that you'll interact with us over the course of the next hour. We are live on March 19th, 2025. It is 6 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, 9 o'clock in the East. Tonight is the 20th anniversary of a major indoor soccer league game, the second MISL, between the Cleveland Force and the Chicago Storm. And on that night, 20 years ago, Cleveland beat Chicago 5-4, but the result is not the reason that we are here tonight. What happened in that game was one of the biggest brawls, maybe the biggest, in indoor soccer history. Now, if you follow the indoor game today, you may remember that a couple of months ago, the Tacoma Stars and the Milwaukee Wave had a brouhaha. That was pretty big. It even got the attention of John Boy, who broke it down on his very popular YouTube channel. It got a lot of attention in mainstream media. But the fight between the Force and the Storm has been largely overlooked for several reasons that we will get into. It was a different time. Now, we're glad to have several guests with us tonight and still hopeful of a couple more joining us as the hour rolls upon. We're in different times. They are in different time zones. They have different perspectives on this game. But we do have some folks already here. And we're also hopeful of getting one of the members of the officiating crew tonight on here, who will have some very valuable insight into what exactly went on when the fists started flying in that game 20 years ago tonight. So here's where I got to make clear that we're not looking to assign blame or reopen old wounds by doing this. We're only looking to get some perspective on this fight from 20 years ago. Usually with enough time that passes, people can have some distance from things. We can talk about things. We can maybe laugh about some things. So there were a lot of little things in this game that turned this into a big thing, and our guests are going to help us sort all that out. So if you are watching, thank you. If you have watched in the past, thank you. If you're watching this live or if you watch it later when it gets archived on YouTube, thank you. You can interact with us in the chat tonight. So put out your comments, questions, whatever. You'll have a chance to ask our guest questions. If you have a cool comment or something, you may see it appear on the screen tonight. So first, as we always do, we're going to rewind to the early part of 2005, set the scene for you, and see here is what was happening in the early first half of the year 2005, 20 years ago. George W. Bush took the oath of office for his second term in the White House on January 20th, 2005, after beating John Kerry in November 2004. And while the younger Bush's presidency was a sequel, the last of the Star Wars prequels, Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, hit theaters in 2005. There are those who think maybe that whole enterprise should have stopped right there with that episode. I would not necessarily disagree. Well, that episode was an ending. This was a beginning. The American version of the British comedy The Office debuted on NBC just 5 days after the game we're about to examine. Carrie Underwood won American Idol. She has arguably been the most successful contestant on any singing competition show ever. And YouTube went online just a month before this game. This is the very first video ever uploaded. Me at the Zoo was the name of it. It's featuring one of YouTube's co-founders. So we are just past 20 years worth of the platform that you are watching us on right now. All right, let us now meet our guests. First, we'll start up in the Pacific Northwest. He was just a rookie indoor goalkeeper when this game was played. He went on to play for almost 2 decades, won MVP, Goalkeeper of the Year awards, all while staying the most laid-back guy you're ever going to meet. If the Indoor Soccer Hall of Fame ever inducts another class, he has my vote. Please welcome Danny Waltman, who joins us from his native Seattle. D-Walt, good to see you, mate.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, man, we're looking forward to it. All right. Another professional indoor goalkeeper, and he was my broadcast partner on that night 20 years ago. Longtime pro, Chicago native, Gordon Tech High School alum, former UIC Flame, and a pro indoor goalkeeper for more than a decade. Please welcome Yaro Deknewski. Yaro.
Thanks for having me on. It is awesome to be here and reconnect about a classic game.
It is. And we're going to start with our final guest who is on with us at the moment. Others are scheduled to join us here shortly. He is a broadcasting colleague, was the radio voice of the Cleveland Force that night and for many years, and he and I tag teamed the MISL Game of the Week on Fox Soccer in 2007, 2008, which is probably worth an episode of its own. Al, you know that. He's been the voice of Cleveland State basketball for many years. You've probably, if you live in the Cleveland area, you've probably seen him on Cleveland baseball broadcasts as well. Here he is, Al Pulowski. Al?
Ken, it is great to be back talking indoor soccer, man. I still wish the Cleveland Force were around. I can't believe it's been 20 years, but I miss those guys. I miss this game.
I know, right? You have the crunch in Major League Indoor Soccer. Obviously, they're playing in a smaller venue. The indoor game is a much smaller thing today than it was then. So we're going to look at this game from 20 years ago tonight, Al, but the bad blood between these two teams goes back even farther than that. And it goes back to what was probably the night you and I met, I would think, because it was the first time that the Storm came to Cleveland, November 3rd, 2004. Well, actually, that game was in Chicago. Storm scored with under a minute left. Chris Carrier scored, and Chicago won 6-5. But 3 days later was the game in Cleveland where the Storm had a 5-1 lead at the half over the Force. They led 5-3 after 3 quarters, and they gave up 6 fourth-quarter goals to lose 9-5. These games were really rough and tumble, and this really was the start of quite a rivalry that played out that season, wasn't it?
Yeah, when you look back at that season, too, it had a lot of interesting subplots. That was one of them, Chicago and Cleveland. It was very rough. There were some physical players on both sides. So, I guess what happened in Chicago when you have the advantage of 2020 hindsight, I guess it's not too crazy to see what all went down, even though that certainly was a crazy night in Chi-Town.
Let me bring in Danny Waltman here for a second. Danny, you were a rookie that year, so everything was kind of new to you. What was your thought on, this rivalry with Cleveland and how things started? It was pretty wild.
It was pretty wild. Just one thing about that place, I never played good there. And so something about the Convocation Center and the way that they had the Force and the big Darth Vader looking over, it worked on me. I never had any good games there. And the rivalry was crazy, with John Ball and the Pernia brothers. They were going at it all season. And so I'm glad you brought it up. It definitely started a few games back. And I remember being on a bus after we just lost a tough game, and we were trying to keep Gaston on the bus because he was trying to get off the bus and go after John Ball in the parking lot right there. We were like, bus driver, just go, pull out. And what's up, Violet? Come here.
Oh, Danny's daughter has joined us live now. Hi.
Say hi to everybody.
Hi. He's a cutie. And the thing is, for people who don't know, that off the field, Gaston was a sweet guy, but he was super competitive on the field to the point of his own detriment, especially as we will see, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's certain guys that in soccer, we're not real fighters. There's a lot of guys that'll talk a lot and puff up their chests and push. But there's a small percentage that will throw punches if you say the wrong thing or the right thing. And they're out there, and the Pernia brothers, man, they do everything 110%, whatever they're doing. And I was happy to be a part of their team because I learned a lot, and I always felt like I was protected with those guys around. But yeah, that was crazy.
Going into this game 20 years ago tonight, the Storm was 15-15. Good for an expansion team. A lot better than a lot of people thought. Half game behind the Force, who was in 4th place at 14-13. By that point, the MISL was a 7-team league because they'd lost Monterrey Tigres and San Diego Sockers, and the top 4 teams were going to make the playoffs. So this is a really big game with playoff implications. And as it turns out, the person that I really wanted to talk to about this has just joined us. And he's not quite on camera yet. So when he gets here, when he gets his camera turned on, our mystery guest will be joining us to enlighten us about this. But we're going to take a look at how this game was rough and tumble from the get-go. So let's take a look now at the beginning of this game. Here it is. So this one really did get rough and tumble. Physical on both sides. This was Sonny Namoski taking out Ryan Hall. The other thing that's interesting here, Robbie Rissadimo is with us. You played a lot of games here. Did you have the sense that this game was going to get pretty physical?
Is this for me?
Yep, you're it, Robbie.
Yeah, I think most indoor games are quite physical, regardless of the opposition. But yeah, I think there was. With indoor, there's a lot of players that play on multiple teams. They get traded, and I played with multiple players on the other team in different franchises. So I think there was a bit of a sense.
Here you see John Ball and Leo Pernia go at it. John Ball, you played with him? What kind of competitor was he?
Yeah, he's a very fiery competitor. Always on edge, kind of trying to wind up the opposition as well. Great indoor career, but I think that's probably what started. A little bit of chirping going on, and then it just escalated.
Fred DeGan takes out Joel Bailey there. We tried to actually extended an invitation for Freddie to be with us tonight, but he was unable to do so. Here he sends Bailey down. Bailey was not you can see him. He's a thin, smaller player. Freddie takes him out with shove in the back. Now this one is an unfortunate foray by Gary DePalma, and Ted Chronopoulos clips him. So DePalma was shaken up there, and that turf in Chicago was pretty hard and unforgiving, wasn't it?
Yeah, old school turf. Those are the reasons why I think all the indoor players can barely walk nowadays. But
yeah, you might be right. All right, so that was kind of setting the scene for exactly how rough and tumble this game was, and we're going to go to the main event here in a second. And since we only have a few of our guests here, we're still waiting for a couple of folks. Let's go ahead, Morgan, and we'll just put everybody up as we take a look. We'll go to the next video, which is the actual fight itself. So here, and we're going to have you guys into here is Ball scoring, and this is really what starts it. All right, and in those days, everybody could come off the bench after a goal. They changed the rule after this. John has words with the Chicago bench. This Lazo Alavanya shot rebounded way out, and Ball was at midfield. He does a nice finish here on you, Danny. Unfortunately, Chronopoulos is trying to get back. He finishes that, and when we come back, the melee has begun. What have you seen from your perspective in goal, Danny?
Well, first of all, if I had made the save, maybe the fight never happens. That's what I'm thinking. And being a young rookie, I was still learning the angles, and I just kind of look at my body position, and he slotted me up near post. I feel like today I would have saved it, but as soon as he ran over to the bench and he started kind of Frank got off the bench, and then there was a little kind of hand motion here, kind of get out of here, I think is what happened. And then there you see him getting in their face. There's a little hand motion. I think they thought that was a punch. That was kind of the thing. They thought he took a swing at the coach. And then it was, once you swing at little brother, big brother's going to come in and clean up and protect him. And at that point, side note on this, my mom flew out for this game, and she hardly ever traveled without my dad, but I think my dad maybe sent her out just to see what I was doing. I was a rookie, signed a contract out here in Chicago. Let's just go check on Danny. And then, so she's up in the stands. I don't know what she's thinking. So no way I could get in this thing. And I'm just trying to turn around and make sure no one's getting killed. And
well, it gets really interesting right here because Larkin ducks the punch and Gaston goes all over. He does land a couple here. Yarrow, you and I are up in the booth at this point. We're trying to, make sense of this and also try to keep control. Bailey comes in with the drop kick there, and every time you thought that things were going to get better or more sedate, they didn't, Yarrow.
Yeah, I think as I mentioned, there had to have been some history with John Ball and Frankie back from when they were both with the Fire, because obviously some stuff was said between the two of them. And then, what's like Danny mentioned.
Nothing right there. See, Lazo is getting escorted off the field because he went to go throw a punch and dislocated his shoulder as he cocked back. And so he never got the punch off, and he just goes immediately off the field. And that was kind of a strange occurrence because this guy was lifting weights all the time. I think if he had connected, he would have killed John Ball, especially with his windup. And so I think, some divine intervention said, no, that's foul play there, Lazo. And he hurt his shoulder. So after the game, we lost all of our defenders to red cards, suspensions, and then Lazo to injury. So we got the worst of it by far. And then Gaston and Leo got that eight game suspension until after we played Cleveland again. But John Ball didn't even get thrown out of the game. He stayed and finished the game. And they were trying to get Larkin thrown out, and then Cleveland said, we're not going to play if you throw Larkin out. Like, he was just defending himself. And so they let him stay in the game, and then they ended up winning. It was a monster game. Look at me and my hair. That's awesome.
Al, you were calling this game on radio. What were you going through at this moment?
Yeah, just watching it again. I've watched it a couple of times before I came on the show here tonight. What's interesting was, you saw John score that goal, and then I saw something go on between him and Frank Klopas. I couldn't really tell what it was, a gesture, a word, or whatever. So I used to keep my own score all the time. So I'd write down what the goal was. So it was like, John ball from whomever at the time. And then I look up and I see this brouhaha starting. And as you guys pointed out, it was interesting because there seemed to be like a lot of little fights going on. It wasn't just one thing, and then it looked like it would stop, and then it wouldn't. Something would pick up somewhere else. So trying to keep track of all of it while still trying to tell my listeners at home, because you guys had TV, so they could see what was going on. I'm trying to explain everything that's going on. And that was all kind of wild keeping up with it. One of the interesting things about Larkin, why they were so adamant about keeping him in the game, I'm very confident this is why. At that time, and Robbie could probably verify this, we weren't traveling with the backup goalkeeper anymore. I think we did for the first half of the season, but because you were limited on whom you could travel, we were just traveling with Larkin. So it would have been red carded. Somebody would have had to go, a field player would have had to go into goal. So, and that might have been Robbie, as a matter of fact. He might have been our goalkeeper the rest of the way. So Reed said, hey, look, if you throw Larkin out, we're not playing because we don't have a goalkeeper anymore.
Right, Robbie, you did sixth attacker duty a lot in your career. Is that possible you might have gone sixth attacker the rest of the way or put on the gloves had Larkin not been able to return?
Yeah, no, probably not. Only typically when we're losing the game. But I think if it's a close game, then they probably would have just put someone a little bit bigger, a defender. Yeah, that's happened a few times in my career where you're pretty much just putting a field player in goal for the whether it's a half or a quarter. But no, I think I was pretty much just used for a six attacker when we were losing.
You could see Omid a second ago was motioning to his right eye. That is where Chris DeRay got hit in the eye. We reached out to Chris DeRay, and understandably, because he got punched in the eye. He did not respond. Omid Amazi did respond, and we're still hopeful that he will join us before the end of the hour, but he is not currently with us. He is a youth coach in Virginia at a very big club there, so perhaps his duties have kept him from joining us tonight, or maybe he will still join us in the time we have left. You may notice a microphone on Frank Klopas's tie there. This was the year of the NHL lockout. There was no NHL, so we had the A team on Comcast Sports.
Hey, notice, look at Byron Alvarez signing out autographs during this fight. It was,
I know, he's got nothing else to do.
I love it.
But we had Klopas wired for sound, but for some reason we did not catch what he said, what John Ball said to him. That would have been golden. That would have been interesting to hear. But we do know, we're speculating that maybe there was bad blood going back a ways, or it was just the heat of the moment because this was such a rivalry. And, Ball's goal was really an important one. It ties the game at this point. The officials are trying to sort things out. The PA announcer had even announced that Jim Larkin had been red carded, but Omid was obviously successful in getting him to stay in the game. We reached out to Jim Larkin, no response. He would have been an interesting one to have here as well. But we are thrilled to have the folks that we do have with us tonight. Now here, again, we'll take a look. This is his ball fights through. And again, you used to be able to come off the bench during a timeout or after a goal. They changed the rule after the game. Here's Pernia. I don't think Leo's punch lands on Ball at all. But still, not that matters. If you throw a punch in a game, that's obviously not the way you want to go. It's not a good look for you. And Omid pled his case. Now, you guys, they're going to restart the game here before too long. Danny, as you mentioned, DeGan, the Pernias are all thrown out. Lazo dislocates the shoulder. You've really got to have a makeshift lineup for the rest of the game because the rosters were so small.
No, we were seriously wounded. John Ball got those guys riled up, and those guys red carded, and he didn't even have to leave the game. Larkin neither. I think they just lost maybe Duray and I don't know who else. Did anybody really get ejected on their team?
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. As you looked, you just missed it. One of the officiating crew in there, the fourth official that night was Ryan Sigich, who is now the head of officials for the Major Arena Soccer League. So Larkin, who oddly enough would end up playing for the Storm because you got traded for him straight up, Danny, in a move that I still think was ridiculous. Here you see Sigich is the guy in the blue on the left, and Chronopoulos is stating his case to Ron Corey, who also said he would be with us tonight and has not yet joined the fray. We're hopeful. So now, like Robbie, you've been you've been to the locker room. They've been trying to sort all this out. You got to come back and play in a tie game that you really need for the playoffs. What was your team's mindset after all this happens?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's been so long. I mean,
Right.
yeah, we had a good team, so I think it was just a big game for us. We ended up getting to the finals. Was that the game? Was that the year we played Milwaukee in the final?
Yep, sure was.
Yeah, really. Wasn't that
Yeah.
double overtime?
Yep, both games went to
Yeah,
OT.
Yep.
probably one of the best indoor games that I've played. I mean, not me personally, but just been a part of. We had a really good, strong team, so we knew that game was massive. And I think when stuff like that happens, I mean, players have been around a long time. You kind of regroup, and we got obviously the better end of that because we didn't have a lot of suspensions or injuries, so we were able to play probably with a man up. I wanted to say we may even had a lot of 5-on-3s.
Yep. One of those will be coming up. Yaro, you had something to say about this.
Yeah, just going back to, I think Danny mentioned one of the players, over the glass signing some autographs. That didn't get enough credit. I mean, all the kids are at the game. Last thing the parents want to see is that, and for some of the players to understand their role, do that. The adults think that
We're losing your audio there, Yaro, for a sec.
Oh,
You're
I'm
cutting in
sorry.
and out. Just get a little closer. It's good. It's all good.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
there's not enough credit given to those guys who tried to take the focus away and let the kids have a different memory from that night.
Freddie was not having it there at all. No, not having it. The other thing you mentioned about the glass was interesting. That was the first year that teams started pulling some of the glass out from the sides of the arenas. I think Kansas City was the first to do it. Here at USC, we had glass all the way around, so that could have kept things potentially from spilling it over into the crowd. So maybe that was another one of the little things that happens. Danny, what is Frank telling you guys about focusing as you go back out on the field to play again?
Oh man, I mean, at that point, we needed to win. We were on the cusp of making the playoffs, and so it was just kind of like dig in, and we need to step up for the guys who aren't here. And I think there was a little motivation, like you're gonna let that guy do that, blah blah blah, and then we went out and lost the game. They were. If you look at that lineup, I'm looking at their team. They were full of veterans, and we were just kind of a ragtag squad of the unwanted older guys and then a bunch of rookies. And so we did have a bit of magic on that team. It was pretty cool. I gotta plug my cup here. I was able to find a Chicago Storm cup back in the closet. But that was wild that we ended, lost all of our defenders, and you had, Robbie connected some punches, and you had Joel Bailey throwing haymaker kicks that would have, if he had connected on those, but nothing happened with either of those guys. We have to talk about Leo Pernia's run into the crowd. He tried to punch two guys and kick two guys at the same time. He did like a 4-limb, punch. And then Robbie grabs him, gets him in the hockey T-shirt, pull over the head, punches him like 5 times. Joel's trying to kick him. And then he still just goes running off looking for more people to fight. I mean, these guys were next level. Just next level. Yeah, man. They did, like I said, they go hard, whatever they do.
You saw Chris Hanser there too. Hanser got away with one as well because Hanser did not receive any discipline for this either. He's in there. Here's again, we had Klippas wired up. He was telling you keep it short, keep your shifts short. And Yaro, you said on the broadcast that you had, in all your years in the game at that point, had never seen anything like this. And you played back in the AISA where you'd play 3-3 against the same, teams that you had been playing, all season. So did it ever get this rough and tumble in the AISA back in the day?
I think Danny mentioned it as well earlier. Soccer fights are two guys chesting up to each other, pushing each other, and it ends. There's a lot of chirping, but there was one original MISL game San Diego was playing, and Terry was being chased around by somebody. I remember that. Hugo Perez, there was a headbutt involved there. But what we saw here, I've never seen anything like it. It was crazy.
All righty. Thank you for joining us here. We're about halfway through our scheduled time of an hour. We'll keep going if it's fun, and hopefully we'll still get some of the other folks that we were hoping to get. You're watching a live retrospective on Soccer Rewind here on YouTube on the 20th anniversary of the big Cleveland Force Chicago Storm fight of March 19th, 2005. Our guests lived that evening, and their insight is super valuable. More in a sec. If you're watching and you enjoy this, give this video a like. Check out our other videos. There's some other interesting ones out there as well, and more to come, as well as shorts on YouTube. And if you want to help us grow, subscribe. We're going to be doing cool perks and giveaways for subscribers. We started the night with 106. Let's see if we can get a few more tonight. You can interact with us tonight in the live chat. Blue Montego has already given us a couple of things in the chat. Pittsburgh Spirit Indoor Soccer has as well. I invite you to check out their channel as well, because there's some really quality games of the Pittsburgh Spirit, really high quality broadcasts. And so I invite you to check that out as well. So you can ask one of our guests a question if you got one. You can follow us on Facebook, Soccer Rewind 2024. Instagram, also Soccer Rewind 2024. Our website is soccer-rewind.com. You can also find content at ken.com. You can email us. You can email us during the show. We'll try to get to that too at rewind@ken.com. But it's probably easier if you're watching. Just put it in the chat, and we'll get you on the air. All right. So back to the game. So on the game level, this was the aftermath of the fight. So we've got the wrong. I've got these in the wrong order. Morgan is our great producer. I think we still have the. This is the one. This is the game level aftermath. So Aaron Susi, for reasons that are still unclear to me, was ejected. Maybe one of these guys can chime in on that. Bailey, we saw it with a kick, so he got ejected. Both the Pernias and Fred DeGan. You may have seen Freddie DeGan mouthing, "Tell me why I was ejected." He did not know why he was ejected. Ted Chronopoulos got a 5-minute penalty as the captain. You know, it was his job to be vocal, but they gave him a 5-minute penalty for it. Laz Lavagna, as we mentioned, he was injured, and Chris DeRay was injured as well. So in that minute of the fight. So we're going to go back to the end of this, because again, this just tied the game, and all this happened. And so we'll bring in all our guests here. The last 20 minutes passed without incident, but not without excitement. Here's how things shook out the rest of the way. The Storm retook the lead 4-3 on this direct free kick against just 3 guys. There you see Robbie, number 8. He found the corner there. They only had 3 players in front of Larkin. So that put the Storm on top 4-3. And Nobi loved jumping up on that glass. The folks at UIC Pavilion were not particularly thrilled, or the people who ran the building were not thrilled with people jumping up onto the jumping up on there as well. This is just your basic, what can you do about this one? You had to feel for Larkin in that instance.
I mean, you set your wall. I don't know. You know, you set your wall. He definitely, there was something off there. And Novi could put it anywhere he wanted.
Yeah.
And I love seeing that salute every time he'd go and jump out. He was an awesome teammate and older veteran to have on the team.
Good presence. Cleveland got a power play after that. Here we see they break the aforementioned Chris Hanser free at the other end. He scores. Game tied 4-4. And this is all within the first 3.5 minutes after play resumed. We're 4-4 with 2 minutes to go in the third period. Now, we'll take a look at this again. Rob, you'd break this down for me. I mean, Anoni Martinez, an excellent player then, and could probably still play today.
Yeah, he was fun to play with. Really a set piece specialist, power play specialist, top of the box type guy. But probably the best left foot in the league at that time.
So what turned out to be the game winner is a nice bit of play here after the turnover, as that one comes hard off the wall. The Force, nice ball movement here to find the open man on the far post. That is Tomas Wies. That was his second and final goal of the season. And oddly enough, he too would go on to play for Chicago the next season. Those were the Hungarians' only 2 pro indoor seasons in this country. Probably his biggest goal. It turned out to be the gamer. And that was real nice work by you guys, Robbie.
Yeah, I mean, I think, great back post pass. As we know, there's no offside, so anything back post has got a chance to go in. And, I think he was a rookie, that Hungarian player. Didn't play a lot of minutes for us and scored a big goal, and now we're just scrambling.
Yep, and Chicago has the 6th attacker on. They're desperately trying to get the 6th attacker goal to send it to overtime. Came so close to doing so, but close does not get it done. Jim Larkin, obviously, celebrating there. Mark Ugi, who was a big pickup for the Storm after the demise of the San Diego Sockers, couple of shots here. De Silva had a shot. Larkin makes a great save. That bike doesn't go. Larkin makes a great save on that as well. So really clutch. Jim Larkin came up clutch on this night here when that could have definitely been a tying goal. Sonny Nomoski tried to get in there as well. But the game ended up Cleveland 5, Chicago 4. Klopas and company deflated. But for you guys, Robbie, I'll ask you, what did getting out of there after all that with the win, what did that do for you guys?
I mean, I think those are great games to win. Obviously, you're in a real battle. You're losing players on both sides. There's a lot of mayhem. From what I remember, again, we went on a great run. We everything started to click, and we were a post away from winning the championship that year against the Wave. So, I felt like we were clicking from there on out.
That's true. In fact, let's look now at the season level aftermath on this. So as mentioned, Gaston Pernia got a 5-game suspension plus the automatic one for the red card, and he was fined. Leo Pernia got a 2-match ban plus the automatic one for the red card, and he was fined as well. Joel Bailey was fined, but no Cleveland players were suspended for their acts here. Both teams were fined, and they did play one more time between these two on April 15th in Cleveland. The Force won that one 7-2 to clinch a playoff spot. So after this game, the Chicago Storm fell to 15-16 on the season. They went 3-5 the rest of the way. Could have still made the playoffs had they won in St. Louis on the last day of the season, but they didn't. The Steamers got in. Cleveland improved to 15-13 and then went 8-3 the rest of the way. Finished second. Then they swept the Kicks in the first round. So that's a 10 out of 13 finishing kick for Cleveland. It seems like, I don't know if there's a correlation, Robbie. I don't know if they, this spurred you on, or if you just figured things out and just got really hot like you want to do at the end. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. I think, what I remember, Omid was that his first year or his second year with Cleveland?
You tell me, Al.
Yeah, he took over, I think, midway through the previous season. And he was a player coach for a little bit. And this was the first season on the bench full time.
Yeah, so that's I remember kind of like a lot of the indoor teams. I mean, you're bringing in a lot of different guys always, so it does take a bit of time to click. But we did have some good players, some veterans, like Danny said, and some guys were just at the right age. De Palma, workhorse, myself, very unselfish player in the midfield. And then you had Neto. It was just a good balanced team. Giannoni Martinez at the back and then a couple other hard-nosed defenders. And it just clicked at the right time. Mead put a good team together. He was a great indoor coach. But again, he was new, and it takes a while, especially in that indoor game, because there's a lot of nuances.
That's true. And Al, you were, their broadcaster and continued to broadcast, not just this sport, but the others. But this was the end of the line for the Force. This version of the Force had been the Crunch, which had succeeded the original Force. Why, from your perspective as an insider, a team that was so successful, why did the Force 2 go under after this amazing season that took them to the finals?
Well, like any team, the expenses got too heavy, but it was interesting because I thought that the team that they put together this year, this 2004-2005, which ultimately was the last season of Cleveland Force indoor soccer, the original Crunch. I know there's been some incarnations. There's a team that exists now, but it wasn't at the same level that this team was. They really put together a strong group. I felt like the group that they had together could have continued on for the next couple of years and been one of the toughest teams to deal with in indoor soccer. But, there was new ownership that took over around 2002. George Hoffman had owned the team. It was led by, Dick Dietrich and his group. And Paul Garofolo was back as the general manager. He was the original PR guy with the original Force back in the 1980s at the old Richfield Coliseum. So they had a plan. They thought they could sell tickets more so than what was done before. I mean, maybe they moved a few more, but, at the end of the day, it just came down to attendance wasn't enough because, as you know, Ken, and all you guys know, in indoor soccer back then, attendance was the driving force. That was the key to everything. There were no local rights deals that were bringing in money. I mean, heck, you look at these deals now in all these other sports, and you're getting millions and millions of dollars. Back then, the Cleveland Force had to pay the radio station to broadcast the games. So that was ultimately it. We had some games, too, that were pretty well attended, but those tickets were discounted. I remember that. But yeah, it's, ultimately I'm still sad that there's not, an indoor soccer team in Cleveland playing at the level that this group did, because it certainly was a lot of fun. I thought it was very well received in Cleveland for years, indoor soccer market. But yeah, this was the last hurrah. It almost was a fairy tale ending, as Robbie talked about, that championship run, losing to Milwaukee in overtime in both games, out of a national TV audience. ESPN got some great ratings for that too. But that was it. I still see that last Lewis that Milwaukee scored. It was on a neutral site, and that was it. That was the last time that a Cleveland Forest player set foot on the pitch.
We have a question from one of our viewers. Did this Forest play at Richfield? They did not, right? Even at the beginning. Well, the Crunch may have when they first started, right? Or back in the as an MISL expansion team, they probably, because the Richfield Coliseum existed until the mid to late 90s, right?
Right. So the original Force was at the Coliseum, and then the original Crunch for the first couple of years was at the Coliseum. And then what happened was, when the stadium issue was on the ballot with Progressive Field and what is now Rocket Arena, that passed in the spring of 1989. So we knew there was going to be an arena downtown, and then the city of Cleveland started trying to get rid of the Richfield Coliseum, which they pretty much did. The last event there was a Roger Daltrey concert in September of 1994. But George Hoffman wanted to get the team downtown ahead of anybody else playing downtown. So nobody was playing in downtown Cleveland as far as the NBA, NHL, MISL. None of that was taking place. It was only the Browns and the Indians. So he wanted to be the first team down there. They went to the Cleveland State Convocation Center, which is now the Wolstein Center. The Coliseum then stood for another 5 years. They tore that down in 1999 because they weren't allowed to host events there, and basically nobody else wanted it. So from 1991, 92, I think that was the first year, actually that was the last year at the Coliseum. So 92, 93 was the first year in downtown Cleveland at the Convocation Center. And that's where the Crunch and then / Force at the end played all their games.
All right. Thanks to Patrick McCarthy for that question. John Schmidt asks, weren't the finals on ESPN or ESPN2 that season, and one finals game in St. Louis? We'll ask Robbie this. You touched on this a bit, Robbie, because to get the date certainty and to get the TV certainty, they had you guys play a game in the first game was in Milwaukee and a game in St. Louis. You're shaking your head because obviously that was not what you wanted to do, and there were two close games that maybe could have come out differently if you had had a home game.
Yeah, probably one of the reasons why, that franchise folded. I mean, you can't even host a game when you make a finals, and that's so, we kind of knew it was the end of the road, and then everyone else gets they got put in the draft, and I ended up going to Baltimore. I think 6 seasons in Baltimore, but yeah, that was frustrating because we were clicking on all cylinders, and to play a road game and then a neutral site, made it very difficult.
All right. So we mentioned Danny Weltman. I'll bring Danny back in. We mentioned that you eventually got shipped to Detroit you went to Detroit for Jim Larkin, right? Well, you got traded for Jim Larkin straight up, I believe, and continued your career on. I hated to see you leave Chicago. Did you hate to leave that team as it turned out?
Yeah, I loved Chicago as a city. I loved our team, and we had just an awesome group of guys, and honestly did a lot better than I think we should have, just because we had such a tight team made up of all the year before the expansion draft guys, and then a bunch of kind of rookies, and it was a lot of fun. And I was coaching camps that year, and Brian Lofton's office was upstairs, and I went to pick up my paycheck, and they're like, "You got to go upstairs," and it's only bad things when you had to do that. And I was thinking, man, I just had a great week at camp. Like, some parent complained about this week, like what? And I go up there and he says, well, Keith Tozer wants you to come play futsal. And I told him you'd be interested. And he said, and I traded you for Jim Larkin. You play for the Detroit Ignition. And like, I went into shock. I was just like, what? What do I do? He's like, you got to pack up your stuff and drive to Detroit. I was just like, man, after a few seconds of getting traded, you're just like, you don't want me? They do? Cool, I'm gone. And I think I was on the road. I remember I got in the car with Matt Stewart, who was my roommate at the time. I told him, he just didn't believe me. He thought I was joking. And then it turned out to be a really good thing for me. It was the right move for them because, as you saw in that game, I didn't know what I was doing. I was all over the place coming out of the box, and I feel like those last 3 goals would have been easy saves. There would have been no fight, and we would have won that game had and I gave the last goal away with a bad distribution with my feet. And so I was still learning the game. And so to trade me for Jim Larkin, it was a great move. But it turned out to help me a lot because I played behind Sonaldo and played with Everton, played with Ricardinho, and really learned how to play with my feet. And that's, invaluable experience for me, and love my time in Detroit. But yeah, I was shocked, and I'll never forget that feeling. I wanted to pull some like Jerry Maguire stuff, but I was by myself in that room. I just remember looking at Brian, just like, what do I do? And he's like, you got to drive to Detroit. You don't work here anymore.
Well, you guys ended up winning the title in the XSL eventually as well for Detroit. You ended up winning Goalkeeper of the Year awards. You ended up playing in Kansas City. You ended up playing back in your hometown. You ended up playing for the team that you idolized as a kid, and in fact, were playing up to a couple of years ago. Are you done? Or are you just hoping for another opportunity, or what? I know you were hurt for a while. You had to miss a season, but you look like you can still play.
Yeah, I just can't seem to find a job right now. The Stars are there's no seats. There's only so many seats on the bus, as they say, and so I definitely didn't retire, and I'd love for the opportunity to get under the lights one more time. It'd be awesome. I still feel like I could do it, and I'm watching guys older than me run around in that league, and I know there's some goalies right now, Boris, Toth. I mean, those guys are going to play until they're 50. Toth probably until he's 60. The way he takes care of himself, and so at one time I felt old, but right now I don't feel that way, and I would love for the opportunity to any coaches watching, available, ready to go.
Exactly. Any indoor team that is watching now, specifically if it's near the Pacific Northwest, would be good. Obviously, you would do that, but he has will travel. This is a guy who's a future Hall of Famer and has had an outstanding career and can still play, and is a great guy to have in your locker room. So unsolicited plug for you, my friend. Let me go to Yarrow now. Yarrow, you were working in the front office for him as well, and just like the force went away due to forces that we see a lot in indoor soccer over the years. The Storm in that that first year at UIC, the second year at UIC, and then the new building opened up in Hoffman Estates that everybody thought was going to be the savior of the franchise, and it turned out not to be that.
Well, first thing I want to say is, well, if we're all going to look to still play, I'm only 62, so I'll play another couple of years if if the phone rings. But no,
it was too, and you could play team handball in LA in 2028. You played didn't you play in the 96 games in team handball?
I did. Been there, done that. Those days are over. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
I don't have the fitness level of a Danny Waltman, but yeah, I was working in the front office with the Storm, and it was that season when the Hoffman Estates building opened up, and it's a beautiful building. I believe they played there 1 year, maybe two, and then I know there was a Chicago Mustangs team that played there as well. The facility was awesome, a little bit outside of Chicago proper, but the stadium that size, I think, would have been perfect for that league. And even as the league stands right now, unfortunately, Chicago is one of those cities that just has a lot of options for entertainment. And you have, an MLS team right now and a lot of other levels of teams. It's just hard, even though the indoor game is so unique and I love it so much and it's given me everything I have. It's just sometimes not every city is built for the current indoor soccer league.
Right. Well, let me ask you this now. I'm going to start. We may as well, Morgan, put everybody up now because I'm just going to go around the horn here, but I'll start with Yarrow since I have him up. As you look back now, 20 years ago tonight at this game, what are your thoughts on this game? Did anything you see change your mind about anything? Or did it refresh your memory? As you look back at this moment in history that you all were a part of, Yarrow, what are your thoughts on what happened and why and what it might have meant in the grand scheme?
Well, first of all, I didn't know the Pernias personally, but till today, if I was in a grocery store and I saw one down the aisle, I would walk the other way because I would not want to piss either one of them off. But I love the passion. Listen, two teams wanting to make a playoff. It tells you what kind of game it is. It's an intense game. It's a great game, and sometimes passion gets the best of you. But it was fantastic to watch, to be a part of, even though for maybe the wrong reasons.
Al Pulaski, you have called hundreds, thousands of different games and different sports over the years. Is this the weirdest thing you've seen, or have you seen anything weirder than what we just witnessed?
Well, that was pretty weird. Yeah, I've seen some weird stuff, but I mean, that was the way that developed and the way it just kept going on and on and on. That was certainly one to remember, and it's one of the last games that the Cleveland Force franchise would ever play. I thought I thought the team was coming together pretty well. They'd added some new players, and they made a trade shortly thereafter. They added a couple more. I thought that game maybe really brought the team together, really solidified them. And then from that game on, really it started forming maybe a month before, but from that game on, they to me felt like the best team in indoor soccer, and they almost won the whole thing. But I think that game and that fight actually ultimately benefited the Cleveland Force in that season.
Yeah, it did. Robbie Ursadimo, you mentioned going on to play in Baltimore after this. You had an outdoor career. You had represented Canada. You'd been the A-League Rookie of the Year in Toronto. You even were able to come back and play for the Florida Tropics in Central Florida, where you're coaching now. Is this game a low light in your career? Is it just a speed bump? Is it something you hadn't thought about until I reached out to you? What are your thoughts on this game 20 years later? Maybe not a lot. I don't know are you muted, Robbie? Is that the thing?
Okay. Sorry. Can you hear me?
There you go. Yeah, we got you. I thought you were just really contemplating the question.
I think, I'm just looking at all the games that I've played at probably 300 or so. There's been a lot of chaos, indoor soccer with, just the way the game is and how fast it is. I mean, this fight obviously was longer than most would anticipate in sort of a fight, but it does. It's not like something I regret. I mean, you look back at it, you kind of have a bit of a chuckle, and oddly enough, Gaston was my roommate in San Diego when I was with the Sockers. So we were actually roommates for a small time. And so, small world, and then we end up, and then now we're talking about it 20 years later. But no, I look back at on the game, and good memories. Obviously, there's always a lot of chippy stuff going on in the indoor game. A lot of people don't realize there's a lot of talking. Benches are so close. There's been a few, and especially when in the early days when you can bring everyone off and celebrate. There's always something going on. But no, it was fond memories. I remember we had a big payroll, so we were expected to do good things. Not that I was making any money. I think John Ball was making all the money in Netto. But anyway, we had a good team, high expectations. So it was a great year. It was a good memory.
And true or false, if he was your roommate off the field, kind of guy Gaston was? What kind of guy was Gaston?
Well, I mean, I think like anybody, when you're, you seem pretty reserved, but I think pretty protective as well.
Right.
So he did have a temper, obviously, but I saw some spurts in San Diego where he was a bit of a loose cannon at times, and obviously it showed there. And then, I think when you're protecting your younger brother, it escalates quickly.
Yeah, you're probably right. All right, and the last word on this this evening, we'll go to Danny Waltman, because A, you had the longest career. B, you started watching indoor probably before anybody here, maybe me. I mean, I started watching in about 1979, and I know you're younger than me because most people are. What do you think of the indoor game today? You played most recently, and you say you watch it as well. The quality, obviously, it's tough because the resurgence of outdoor soccer has drained indoor of a lot of the guys who are skill players who would have had no other choice in the 80s, and even were still had a viable option in leagues like the NPSL and in the late 90s and early 2000s. What do you think of the indoor game today?
I think the game is great. I'm just disappointed that it's more of a part-time gig. I'm looking back at that video. It was a full-time job for all of us, and the guys played outdoor and there was the overlap, but it was 8 months. It was 40 games. I thought that was brilliant because Robbie touched on it. It takes a while to like really find your rhythm, and you need 10 games just to really get into a rhythm. And then if you think of these seasons now being 24 to games, if they had another 15 games on them, the level of those games and the level of play that would happen, I'd love to see it. Honestly, like Robbie said, everybody was making money back then. I was a rookie living in an apartment in Chicago, paid for by the team, making I think I was making $2,000 a month, and that was I walked out of there like I thought I was, I don't know, Ronaldo or something. I was like,
Right.
I made it. It didn't go very far in Chicago, but everybody coached. If you wanted a second job, you just coached in the evening and made a little extra money. But there was no. It was kind of the main deal. You didn't think about having another job, and so more effort was put into it by all the guys. You could be pros. I'm thinking of the stars right now, like all those guys practice in the morning at 7 o'clock and then go to work. Some work in construction, and it's like, how can you be at your highest level when you're finishing concrete for 8 hours a day? And I mean, I'd like to see it get back to that full-time gig, and I don't know what needs to get there. Some big money needs to come in. Some celebrities need to get on board. But I think the game itself is great. And, I don't mind the goalkeeper rules that they're putting out there. I sit at home, I watch every game. They're so exciting. And so really happy with that, and just love to see that it grow a little bit. Love to see a 35 game season, 30 games minimum, and have it be, a little bit what it used to be, and have it be something that players can live off of, and get a retirement from, everything. Because I remember back in the day, the coaches were making well over $100,000, all of them, and the GMs were getting paid. Everybody was getting paid. All the veterans were getting paid, and buying all these cars and doing all this stuff. And whoa, Freddie again.
We have a question here, or at least a comment. The indoor game, MSL needs a TV contract and to find a major financial backer. Oh, as if that's all. Yeah, that's what we all want, right? Also expanded the width of the field would enhance the play and expand available tactics within the gameplay. Now, obviously, the indoor field was laid out originally over a hockey arena, which was standard, was 200 by 85. I know, Danny, that during the pandemic, you were on a live stream and talked about the rules of the game and how sometimes we've overcomplicated things. That you liked an opportunity to just put the ball down and play. Let's play. Is the game too complex, or do we need any other types of new rules, like expanding the width of the field, which would be really hard, by the way, just because of the nature of the things? Do you think we've made this game too complex now?
I don't think so. There are a lot of rules. I think I've always wanted it simple, just for the first time fan walking in there, just to not have to think about any rules. Kick it in their goal. Don't let them kick it in yours. If it's a really hard foul, you go in the box. People kind of know that stuff. I was trying to get rid of the top of the arc for years, and trying to get rid of the sub rule for years. And I think it's in a good place now. It's not too bad. That the video replay would have changed that fight significantly if they had the review. But it's cool. I'm okay with the challenges and stuff, because the game's so fast. It's hard to see everything from every angle. So I'm okay with the challenges and the video replay. I think it's a good game right now. I can't believe if anything, I would say everybody's got to play on a big field, and if you don't have one,
right.
Sorry. Yeah, I was gonna mention back in the day, you can't really widen the field, because when I played, at least, every arena was different. Like, we played against the Canton Invaders, and their field was
right.
half the size of any of the other fields. So that kind of had the charm part of the game as well, because you can adapt to your home field and have that advantage. The Invaders won 5 championships because of that field.
Right.
So I don't think that's realistic. But the question that I see somebody asked was about, are the goals too big? I mean, they keep messing with the goals. I personally like the original goals.
Right.
The original MISL goals with the original Rocket Red ball.
Those
I
were
think
like 8 by 14, weren't they? And then they expanded it by like they made it quite a bit bigger in the late 1980s, right? I have 2 goalkeepers here and a former guy who used to shoot at the goal and a broadcaster calling goals. I mean, I'm not sure. There seems to be plenty of goals. I mean, this league is averaging 12 goals a game, which is about the historical average. So maybe widening the goal is not really I don't think scoring is the problem. I think the real problem is, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of players don't have to play indoor, and maybe they're working conditions could be better because even in USL they have a collective bargaining agreement, which is something that never, hadn't happened at the lower levels of soccer before. So, there are lots of problems in the game, but we still have we have the history, and I really appreciate you guys coming on tonight live. This experiment, it was
I
fun.
gotta say one thing.
Oh,
There's one
do it.
thing about the fight that no one really knows, and that is
Okay.
the fact that we were in the locker room and Chicago PD was there, and they wanted to arrest the Pernia brothers because I remember it very well. The guy said, "I don't care what sport you're playing. If you push a cop, you're going to jail." And so our owners, our Frank, they had to do some talking, some serious greasing to keep those guys out of jail, let alone in the game. And I was I just remember being a rookie, just going, "This is crazy." And not only that, my mom flew out for it,
Right.
and she was just happy that I didn't throw any punches and didn't get in any fight. But
Well, that's because
I,
you're the most laid back dude. You're not going to do that.
that's not true. The real reason was I was trying to play and earn a spot, and I knew that I always knew that if you got red carded, you'd miss games. And so for me,
Right.
that was enough. And then let alone the fines that were given out. I remember Gaston's fine was more than my paycheck. So there was, I just wasn't, I kept my mouth shut for a long time. And that was a good thing.
Pretty smart. Pretty smart. All
Yeah.
right, gentlemen. This has been fun and enlightening. Thank you all for coming on. Thanks to all of you for watching. Apparently, as many as 7 people were watching this at any point. Thank you for making the time. If you enjoyed this, again, give this video a like. Check out the other videos on the channel, both long form and shorts. Subscribe. Like I said, we started the night with 106 subscribers. Let's see if we have any more by the time all this is over. And as promised, once we got to 100 subscribers, we were going to do a raffle. It's 10 subscribers chosen at random are going to get one of these cool NASL retro patches. Now there are legalities with regard to raffles in YouTube. Our legal team is on the case. We're trying to figure out how we're going to do this. We'll probably do a live random drawing for the patches, but you got to make your subscription public for us to be able to do that. So use your username on to get in on the raffle. We'll be back with more vintage American soccer matches and guests soon. And this was such fun. Maybe we'll do another live thing later. If you got a suggestion for that, give us an email at rewind@ken.com. Coming up, we're going to have videos on Team America, the Hartford Hellions. John Kowalski is going to be with us on that. The LA Aztecs with Johan Cruyff. They are going to be the subject of one of our upcoming videos, and we're very excited about this one. I'll give you a little taste of this. Just a little sauce. We have acquired 1978 American final between the New York Apollo and the LA Skyhawks. To my knowledge, this has not been seen anywhere in more than 40 years. You're watching footage that has been sitting in a glass jar on Funk and Wagnall's porch for the last 40 years. Maybe not quite there, but anyway, Charlie Catone got us that one. That's going to be an upcoming episode as well. So again, here's how you get a hold of us. If you got an idea for a video, if you got a vintage, maybe you have a vintage game broadcast in a box, right? Somewhere in the garage. Get in touch with us at rewind@ken.com. We're on Facebook at Soccer Rewind 2024. Our website is soccer-rewind.com. We're at Instagram at Soccer Rewind 2024 as well. Many, many thanks to our producer, Morgan Edwards, who did a great job with air traffic control tonight. Guys, if you're on the back end, stick around after we end the live stream here in just a second. Maybe we'll do this again, though. Thanks for watching. Have a good evening. And remember, be kind, rewind. We'll see you next time on Soccer Rewind. Good night, everybody.